So it's no secret that DBD has been seen in a much more negative light recently. I mean, it's always been seen negatively, but it's even worse now. And the big problem, as many of you may be able to guess, is the pallet density update. And I kind of want to talk here about not the pallet density update itself, but the reason why it's so bad. And all kind of balancing updates are not the greatest ideas. And something that a lot of people fail to take into account when discussing things like the pallet density update. And so, in my eyes, one of the, if not the biggest problem in DBD that isn't just right now, but it's been a thing forever. It is the imbalance of the killers themselves. This is the reason why the pallet density update is so bad. Because if you look at killers that are really strong, like Billy, Blight, Ghoul, I'm not going to say Nurse because we're not going to sit here and act like she's actually affected by more pallets. But you look at them and you be like, well, yeah, this pallet density update's a good thing. But then you look at Bubba, Trapper, Skull Merchant, Legion, and be like, oh no, this is a terrible update. So, something I think really needs to happen and to be taken into account is the difference in strength and killers, and they need to be balanced before behavior wants to make any big balancing updates or changes. Because here's the problem with how not only it is right now, but how it's always been pretty much, is that if behavior wants to make an update, either buffing or nerfing killers, no matter what they do, it's a bad outcome. Because if you buff killers, you're buffing things like Nurse, Blight, Ghoul, Billy, killers that very much do not need buffs. But, on the other hand, if you nerf killer, you're absolutely destroying anything below B tier. All C and D tier killers become so bad that unless if you're facing bad survivors, they feel unplayable. And I feel like behavior constantly fails to account for this. And before any big quality of life balancing updates, they need to first account for the strength of killers. Because you can't buff or nerf anything without it causing strong or weak killers to either feel too strong or too weak when they already feel too strong or too weak with Blight and all the other high tier killers. So I just think that in the upcoming or just future updates of DBD, before we focus on these things like pallet density and those anti-tunneling changes they wanted to add before they got a lot of backlash for it, they need to first actually look at the problems with the killers themselves in the game. Because you can't account for survivors and what they have or any of that if you're looking at such a wide scale of strength. Especially because if you look at Survivor, honestly, and I know a lot of people are going to go crazy on me for this, but I think kind of inherently, well, first off, I want to say, I don't think the game's necessarily killer or survivor sided if my whole argument hasn't established that yet. But when you look at kind of the more balanced killers, I think if you bring stronger stuff on Survivor, the game does become much more survivor sided. But the problem is you can't really account for that being like, oh, we need to weaken survivors because all these killers seem way too weak. But then you're going to have people angry and not want to play the game, like justifiably, because then they're going to still have those nurses, blights, and ghouls, and it's going to feel way too awful and unfun. Because something that I think a lot of people who know about like higher play have realized or seen is when you get these S tier really strong killers with strong loadouts against really good survivors with really good loadouts, the game honestly feels kind of balanced. But the problem is that this game, and I'm not even gonna try and hear out the, oh, it's a competitive game. This game is not a competitive game. I'm not saying there isn't competitive aspects and you can't treat it competitively, but at its core, this game is a party game. So a lot of people, and probably most people, aren't going to be wanting to bring the sweaty, strong stuff to play against these sweaty, strong killers or sweaty, strong survivors. And then what it's going to do, it's just going to make everyone miserable because they're just constantly feeling way too weak compared to all these people who are running this really strong stuff because they see the game in a more competitive. And I feel like this could go into a whole nother conversation of like ranked and why it needs to be in the game, but I'm not going to touch that right now. But it just feels very, very bad with how the game is just kind of designed around the strength of these things and how wide a variety it is. Because if you look at any part of the game that is like unbalanced, you can look and find the start of it always has to do with individual killer strength. So, yeah, that's about it for this video, but I just really think, in my opinion, like, I could be wrong about these things. I'm not a game designer, okay? I'm not the smartest person in the world or anything. But it is just my belief that if DBD wants to have success in the future with good balancing, before they focus on some of these quality of life balancing changes, they need to focus on individual killers. Okay, so that's about it for this video. I hope anyone watching this has a great rest of their day, and yeah.